And if you have any further questions, we've got our website where you can go and navigate and try and see where you fit in and how you can derive more value. So from a time perspective, we are doing very poorly, and I'd like to really apologize. So we only have 15 minutes for our Q&A session, and we have 87 questions to go through. So I'm apologizing in advance for the fact that we're not going to be able to get through to the majority of these questions. The first question was whether they can have, it was from Saisi, is it possible to get a copy of the presentation of the full scoop? Yes, if you just Google it, the links are all over our YouTube, Instagram, and all our social media handles. The next one is from Policy. It says, I'm a site technologist based on site for various projects for a consulting firm. How do I go about completing my PR registration without doing design? I think you've already answered that, Lebo.
So that is a very crucial question, because a lot of people are understanding that it is about engineering projects. No, it is you solving engineering problems. So obviously, if you work on a site, there's going to be a lot of engineering problems that you will need to give solutions to. So definitely, I think outcome one needs to be understood that it is solving engineering problems. Yeah, it's just a problem, not the whole project. Yeah.
Right. Because then there's a lot of design optimization that happen even at construction level, which could then count towards the design. Yeah.
Yeah.
What sources or alternatives can one look into if you would like to register, but all superiors on site are also not professionally registered? Who can then sign off my logbook?
So in that particular case, I think the first part is I'm going to advise you to go look at that class where we spoke about how to choose a referee. But definitely one of the key things that you can do is you can use one of your clients. If you do have a client who is registered, please go and use that person, because that person's got direct witnessing of how you apply yourself, solutions you give, are you responsible, are you, all of those things that are required. So that is really something that is like the last straw. But if you do not have registered people in your company, you can definitely use your clients. So let me also close it by saying, Refueler, you know, a referee is somebody who's got direct interactions with you. So it's somebody who can conclusively say, are you competent or are you not competent, you know? So I think, remember, the mentor and the supervisor are the first prize. But if you've got anybody else who's registered, who has seen you at a design review, presenting your solutions, justifying your options, you can use those people, even if they're not directly involved with you as an individual.
Okay, that's quite clear to me. I hope it answers their question. The next one says, can a submission for PR Tech or PR Eng still be made if one of the supervisors overseeing work has either passed away or there is differences between the engineer and the supervisor will not approve the work or provide referrals?
Okay. So what ECSA actually does for these special cases is they do allow candidates to submit an affidavit that's going to say, you know, this person who was training me in this has passed away. Obviously, the second scenario, so I've answered the first scenario where somebody passes away, you can use an affidavit for that. It's similar to somebody whom you cannot trace. They left your company, you need them to sign, you cannot find them. This is highly impossible given that there's Facebook and there's LinkedIn. But if you do happen to be in this case, you can use an affidavit. With that being said, obviously, if your whole report is supported by affidavits for everything, obviously it's going to be a problem. Now, when it comes to your second part where you say, what if there is conflict? You know, this type of conflict is real because also you will see in other companies, there are people who don't want other people to be registered, you know? So also when you choose a referee, you need to be very mindful of who you choose. If you know that Refueler doesn't like you, please do not use refueler, because refueler is going to blatantly say, no, label cannot be registered. So I'm going to encourage you to rather go and look at the first, start with everyone who is direct, even if it's just people who sit at a design review where you present your work. If all fails, go to indirect co-workers and colleagues. And then, like I said, you can go to the client. But definitely, if you have some problems with your direct supervisor or mentor, try as far as possible to not use that person, you know, because you know how it is, Ms.
Sure.
Let's understand, please, everyone who's still tuned in. Your referee is the first person who says you should be registered. Let me tell you the sad news. When your referee says no, there is nothing that ECSA is going to do. No assessor is going to read it. No. If your referees say, no, refueler is not ready, they're not going to read it. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So when you choose your referee, you have to choose the people that you know, you have serviced them well, you have shown off your best, you put your best foot forward. There's no other way to bypass that one.
Sure. Thank you. It's quite sad, and I'm hoping everyone who is on this call will never have that attitude towards not wanting other people to register. Because as I said, we do have a skills shortage, and if we don't look after our pipeline, it's going to become a problem.
Refule, I know we're out of time, but I don't think anyone who's still tuned in will have a problem with spending like maybe 10 more minutes. What I need to also give comfort to the listeners is, you know, actually, if, say, for example, you've got 4 referees and there's one person who clearly has an issue that is not backed up by the other 3, normally a person like that will make it through. I mean, back when I was chairperson of vice chair, we used to actually call to try and understand what is the problem, because the other 3 are positive and you are the only one who's off the tangent. So I want you guys to also know that if somebody blatantly has an attitude, you've written the report, it's good, assessors see it good, your other referees are seeing it good, you will get registered. It's not to say, the problem comes when all 4 say no. Yeah. So I think for the purpose of, I need to say this also, because if you don't use your mentor and you don't use your manager, it also sends a red flag. Why are you avoiding the person who's going to be promoting you? PR means you're going to get more money, you're going to get more responsibility. So also avoiding them does send a signal that is not nice. But I wanted you guys to know that there is other ways that moderators can, you know, filter this. It's actually quite visible if somebody has a dark heart, you know, very visible.
Thanks for that. We have an international question. I'm registered civil engineer with Corin in Nigeria. Please, what are the requirements to become registered with ECSA and Saisi? Maybe you can do the ECSA part quickly and then Patty can do the Saisi part.
Yeah, I think just a starting point is that ECSA is a statutory body. They regulate the profession. Saisi is a voluntary association, so they support the different disciplines. So with regards to you being registered in Nigeria, one thing that I can say for sure now, currently, is that South Africa is the only country that is a member of the international alliances. So in this case of this question, you will need to undergo an educational evaluation to first check if your qualification is equivalent to qualifications in South Africa. Once you have cleared that, obviously competence is, you know, we've gone through the 11 outcomes. So once your education is accredited, you can proceed with the process, the normal as somebody who studied at VET, somebody who studied at UCT. So unfortunately for this particular candidate, they're not going to have the luxury of the international alliance. Remember, international alliance is the accords. Anybody who studies under the accords is going to be seen the same as somebody who studied at VET, somebody who studied at UCT. I hope that helps. So in Africa, there is no other country that is currently a member of the accords, unfortunately. I think Botswana is the closest one to becoming a member. Besides that, and remember, guys, if you studied before a particular period, if the country wasn't an accord at the time you studied, the accords are not going to help you. Education evaluation, sir.
Thank you so much. And Patty, from a SAIC perspective?
Oh, if you want to become a SAIC member, you're welcome as long as you're a civil engineer. Then you can go to the website and there's a process on how you can become a member.
Okay, thank you. I see Priska joined us. Welcome, Priska. You can scroll through the questions and then I'll do the next one and then you can take over the next question.
Okay.
This one is from Neelam. She says, hi level, I'm a civil engineer and currently do not have site experience and am thus hesitant to start writing up. I've heard that you do not need site experience to register. However, many people I know have been asked questions related to site work during the ECSA interview.
Okay, so in that case, it's going to depend if this person was in the legacy system or the new registration system. In the legacy system, remember even Refule said they used to write an essay. By the way, Refule, civil were the only people that wrote an essay. It wasn't everyone.
Really?
Yeah. So in the current system, the mechanicals are the only ones that have an additional requirement because they have to do a full design, a full mechanical design. But with regards to site activities, I wish we had time to really look at the outcomes because outcome says, 4 says managing an engineering activity. So we are moving from projects to activities. Let us understand that managing an engineering activity is just that. It could be timesheets for people working on a project. It could be you being a design leader for a multidisciplinary project. It is an engineering activity. It is not, so please go and look at the 11 outcomes and specifically look at outcome 4. Outcome 4 says managing an engineering activity. It is not going to site. And then with that being said, when you talk about going to site, it's going to benefit you when you talk about things like outcome 6, where they ask you about impact of engineering activities to the environment, to the society, and those type of things. What you can do is you can totally go and take an environmental impact assessment report that is done on your project. Read that report. What ECSA wants is for you to understand that activities that engineers do have impact to the, normally they call it the public, but the public is the people in the environment. So I always say to people, some of the outcomes, you can actually read a book just to understand what the outcome is about. Even in terms of the level of responsibility, you will see some of them is level C. Level C means I have an understanding that if I put up a power line, I'm going to impact visual. I'm going to, when I construct, I'm going to create dust. So it is not the case that if you do not go to site and witness people building the power line, you cannot get registered. No, ma'am. Okay. So then I'm saying those people that actually get to manage a project, all they're doing is they're exceeding the expectation of outcome 4. Yeah, so it's an engineering activity. It doesn't matter. It has to just be an engineering activity. Okay. Refule, I think it's important to say this because in the legacy system, there was more focused on projects.
Projects, that's correct.
Yes. That's and correct. Then in the new registration, it's engineering problem and it's engineering activity. Yeah. So whatever activity, whether there's an emergency, you go and manage that emergency, it's an activity. That is adequate, ma'am. But also, I think if I'm you, I will make an effort to go there and just see. It's good to see you designed it on paper. What is it like when it is built? Okay, so in a lot of companies, it is actually the designer's responsibility to ensure that this thing is built according to spec. Remember earlier I said you need to be seconded. So please try and just go because it's going to give you a better understanding for your professional review. It's going to make you holistic.
Thank you, Lebo. I'm going to ask that we confine the answers, and I know sometimes it's not possible to confine them to 30 seconds, just so that we can cover as many as we possibly can. Priska, go ahead.
I'm taking questions off the registration.
Okay.
So there's a question here about moving from having a BTech in water and registering as a structural engineer. this person wants to know if you can actually do that, if you're practicing as a structural engineer, but you're qualified as a water, under a BTEC for water.
100%. What you do in industry and what you do in university, two different things. So what the code of conduct says is you need to ensure that you are competent before you do the work. So the candidate must get training, must get experience. By the time they do it, they are competent, meaning they can give safe solutions. So the answer is yes. And you can have as many areas of competence as you wish, as long as you're competent.
Thanks, Lebo. There are quite a number of questions around CPD points for this webinar. We don't have any CPD points for this one. Priska, do you have another question?
There's another one here on repetitive work. She wants to know if she's able to register as a professional with repetitive work. She does the same thing, solving the same problems with very little changes on site.
Yeah. Okay, so that particular individual is doing what a technician is supposed to be doing, because technicians solve clearly defined problems. And the easier way to explain them, it's routine, nothing is unknown, everything is clearly defined. You just ensure that the activity happens according to the spec or the instruction. However, if this candidate is an engineer, they will not be able to register because engineers solve complex engineering problems. Technologists solve broadly defined. So meaning to say they work with a particular technology, but some of the aspects are not defined. So they need to investigate, they need to analyze. So in this case, I will guess that the candidate is actually a technician. Then my answer to them is there's nothing wrong with that work because technicians do clearly defined problems.
Thanks for that. Let me see. Itumeleng says, does Saisi have structures in all provinces? That would be for you, Patty.
Okay, yes, Saisi has a presence in most provinces. However, we are trying to revive some of the areas because you see, some of the people are old, those who were active. As you said in the statistics, 75% of the civil engineers are white people, white men. So as they grow older, some of the branches became dormant, but we're in the process of reviving all those branches. So please, if you can visit our website, you can see which branches are still in existence and you can belong to those branches.
Thanks, Patty. Priska, question from your side?
Before we take the other question, I think it's important to say to our listeners, the VAs take all categories. It's not just engineers.
Yes.
Because it's called civil engineers, electrical, but actually it's for engineers, technologists, technicians.
Yes,
It's
yes.
important.
That's a good point.
To understand that, yeah, it's just the name.
Okay, that's a good point.
I'm going to merge two questions. Because they're both asking more or less the same thing. The first one, he's saying he submitted on the 11th of September. His information was captured on the 18th. He wants to know, will they still have an appraisal interview this year? The second one is also with regards to appraisal interviews. He wants to know if during his presentation he can give a project background or he needs to go straight to demonstrating how he met the 11 outcomes.
Okay, so if you are called for an EA interview, which is the Experience Appraisal interview, right? Literally, the assessors are going to be driving what you need to respond to. They're going to ask you specific questions. If you are going for a professional review, you have to prepare evidence for all 11 outcomes. Then my advice to you is do not go and share too much about the project background because you only have 15 minutes to give evidence for all 11 outcomes. So I always say to guys, focus on the complexity of the problems you solved and your level of responsibility. Complexity is the number one. You have to show off that the work is complex. I'm talking now for engineers. But this applies to everyone. Everyone has to make a 15-minute presentation that addresses all the 11 outcomes. Don't focus on the project details because there are project managers for that. You focus on the engineering problems that you solved. Your exact contribution.
Does that answer both questions, Priska?
Yes.
About okay, so somebody asked about the experience appraisal. Okay, so what everybody needs to be understanding at this point, and it's a little bit of a problem. So when your report gets assessed, they're going to appoint 4 assessors. So normally what happens is you can find somebody responds after a week, somebody after a month, somebody after 3 months. So it's very difficult to like say to someone, will it be done this year or not? Because the moderator can only finalize the report when all 4 assessors have responded. What ECSA does is that they do limit the time that an assessor can take to respond back. So if the assessor doesn't respond within, it's just that I don't know the exact period, because guys, I need to say I don't work at ECSA, I'm just a volunteer. But I know when I used to do interviews and assessing, there is a period that if they say 4 weeks, if the assessor doesn't, they're gonna appoint another assessor. But please pay attention, you see the new assessor also needs 4 weeks. So normally that's where the delay comes from. Some of the people are fortunate, they get assessed and then in 2 weeks it's back. The report is back. It all just depends on how quickly the assessors do it. So I can't answer the question directly.
You gave a fair enough answer to that. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're going to have to cut the Q&A session here, and I'd like to thank everyone who's decided to stay on despite us going over time. Thank you so much for indulging us and giving us an extra 10 to 15 minutes.